All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you once again for being part of GDG Singapore's program. And today we are very excited to talk to you about Android 11. And we have a bunch of very exciting topics for you. We invited a few people from Google who will give us some general updates on Android 11. And today you all will have some fantastic opportunity to ask them your questions and make sure that we are all prepared uh, as soon as Android 11 goes out. So thank you so much once again. We are GDG Singapore, Google Developer Group. We are a bunch of volunteers who are very much passionate with the Google technologies. And of course, our baby green robot is one of our key passions here. So we are very much excited to talk to you today. Also, we want to thank all these communities who help us share the event. Thank you, GDG Mekong, MDIS Singapore, PADSI, and many other GDG communities in Southeast Asia. Thank you so much, and I hope that like you are enjoying this event with us today. Also, we have a lot of signups from very diverse places in the world. We have people from Pakistan, Korea, Hong Kong, Myanmar. Thank you so much for being part of this event. We hope you enjoy this with us. And also, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get updated with new videos, new events that we are going to do. We think that it will probably last until third quarter or fourth quarter of this year. And so we have a lot of very exciting shows for you. So please make sure to subscribe to get updated. We are also looking for volunteers. Let us know if you are interested to be a designer or perhaps a web technologies project manager who will help us run a lot of our future web technologies events. On the other hand, we are also looking for Firebase and Flutter project manager who will probably be doing the same thing. Please do contact us in the email below. And also, you can talk to us in the chat if you're interested. We think that volunteering in GDG Singapore is a fantastic opportunity for you to get exposure, talk to different people from Google, get closer to the new updates in Chrome, Angular, Android, TensorFlow, and several other Google technologies. So please contact us if you're interested, and we'll be happy to help you. And let's continue to grow this community and make an impact. A few updates on our upcoming events. Our friends from GDG Cloud Singapore will be coming up with a BigQuery event. Please do follow them on their Facebook page. It will be, I think, sometime next week. So please keep yourselves updated on this if you're interested. Also, we will be doing an Android Day, likely in June. More information to come after this event. Also, we will be doing another Chrome Dev Summit. This time with more speakers from other how do you put this, like from other communities, other companies. So please do join us. More info to come, probably in Q2, Q3 this year. We are also working with the Google Marketing Platform, still waiting for more information from them. But this will be part of our upcoming event, hopefully. And also, there will be an upcoming Firebase event. Please hang on tight. We'll be giving more information as more information comes in. And we are looking for speakers. And you don't have to be in Singapore to speak with us. You can be in Africa, Hong Kong, Vietnam, China. Please sign up on this link. We are looking for people who might be interested to talk about Google Assistant, Android, Kotlin, Firebase, Flutter, TensorFlow, Google Cloud, or even if you're very much passionate in engineering management, we have a rework program that we are looking to do in the future. So if you're interested with those topics, please do submit your paper and we will contact you. And these are some of the ways to follow us. We have Facebook, Meetup, YouTube. So please feel free to follow us as well to get updated with future events. And all right, let's now talk about our favorite green robot, Android 11. We have a bunch of speakers today. We have Marcel and Xiaodao, both our partner developer advocate from Google, who will be sharing with us a few updates on Android 11. And the second part of this show, we'll have Google developer expert Saurabh Arora, who will open up a Q&A session. So please feel free to ask any question you want about Android 11 in the YouTube chat. and we'll try to answer as much as possible all the questions that are posted there. All right, so here are the lineup of topics, and now let's go ahead with the first video.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marcel. I'm a developer advocate at Google. I'm based in Singapore. And today I'm going to cover some of the privacy changes that we are introducing in Android 11. As you might have seen in the last year, the main focus on Android release was privacy. And future releases will not be different. But before we get into the changes, let's recap a bit. We introduced over 50 privacy features in Android 10, making it our most privacy-friendly release to the date. We make changes in permissions. We add location as a top-level setting, making it easier for users to access the information. We made location permissions more granular, splitting between foreground cases and background cases. We added some background location reminders for users to know that an application is using that permission on background. We made the activity recognition a runtime permission because of the sensitivity of this data could provide. We as well restricted a lot of the hardware identifiers that could allow developers to fingerprint users and take information out of their devices. We as well restricted the launching of activities from the background that was misused for developers to pop up suddenly without the user expecting that. One of the main changes in Android 10 was that we introduced the granular location permission. We have seen over half of the users selecting only while the app is in use. And our data suggested that the users understand while in use and are intentional about that choice, providing us with a strong signal that users are choosing to share less information and data with apps. We always try to balance between devs and users. That's why we did not downgrade the permissions we introduced. So not any application was downgraded from always to while in use when the user would switch to Android 10. Yet, we wanted to make sure that the users were aware that an app had that permission and they might be accessing the location data on background. That's why if the system detected that an application was accessing the location in background, it will show a notification alerting the user about that. We have seen about 30% engagement on that notification that leads to 60% of users that engage to change the permission from always to while in use or even deny it, telling us that the user was not aware of the application having that location permission. So in Android 11, we bring greater protection to the user data. We continue what we started and we focus again on new permission changes, improved scope storage, some of the new foreground services types, and some package visibility changes to ensure that we protect the user for our data and we enforce our developers to follow the best practices. On top of that, we are as well enabling a data access auditing framework that will allow developers to know where of their code is accessing APIs that either require permissions or accesses privacy data. Because we know that all our apps has third-party SDKs. Sometimes our code grows so much that we don't know where this API call is being made. So this API tries to help you to find out. We will not be covering this part on these days. We will focus on the privacy changes. So with further ado, I'm going to start introducing some of the privacy changes with it. In Android 10, we saw the users were choosing to share less private data with the apps with the new location setting. We also saw that there are many apps which request background location access with no need for it. So we ask our users what other types of data are important to them. With no surprise, microphone, camera, or video were one of the parts that they were interested on being sure that the applications don't they get access to it all the time. So based on the feedback in Android 11, we are bringing users more granular control over user privacy to data location for camera and microphone, and significantly limiting access to background location. But we do not do this out of the blue. Our studies indicate that permission changes are well received by users, and not only that, they as well are asking for more. They want to have more control over it. And we have seen users asking for some sort of way to give only one-time permission to the app instead of always granting this permission forever. So we listened and we introduced what we call one-time permission, or as shown to the user, only this time. That means that user will be able to grant temporary access to the location permission while the app is being used for this time. Meaning that if the system detects that the user is no longer using the application, the permission will be revoked. So next time the user tries to open the app and use this feature, the permission will be revoked. So you will have to ask it again. One remark here as well is that there is no more deny and don't ask again option. Instead of showing 4 buttons, there are only 3. And here we made the system decide when the user denied enough times that we will deny and permanently deny this permission. So we avoid applications over asking for permissions. The same applies for microphone access. Users might be concerned that an app has access to record audio. So now they have the choice to maybe only grant it when they are going to use that feature. For example, a voice call feature in your app could just prompt it to the user the permission and select only this time because they are using it on that moment. But then the next time they open the app and they don't use this feature, they don't need to grant you access. So they will not, your application will not have access. But if the user wants to use the feature again, then they could, you can ask again for it. The same logic applies to audio, to camera or video. The user might only need the voice call, for example, and maybe one time they decide to actually do a video call, and then they grant only this time because it's the only time they wanted to use that. But maybe the next time they open the app and they see that the feature was useful for them, they might feel more confidence of why your app is asking for that permission and grant while the app is in use. So you might have this important question in mind. Do I need to change anything to work with one-time permission? And the answer is nothing. The one-time permission gives you access to those APIs while the user is using the app, only revokes it after the user stops using the app. Similar behavior that could happen before. But to explain a bit further this, what it means is that if the user grants you only this time and goes out of the app, either because switched to a different app, it went to the home screen, it maybe locked the device. So the permission will be revoked eventually. And I say eventually because we are obviously giving some grace period before we revoke the permission to avoid like when user is like, for example, app hopping. They might be opening a notification that displayed and open an app, but then just come back to yours or selecting something for your application. So we want to ensure that we are not over revoking the permission so that we will be prompting users a lot for the permissions. An important note as well is that foreground services are considered a foreground use case. They basically show the user that the application is still running via notification, but there is no activity on top. This is considered a foreground use case. The same, while the option of while in use, you could still use a location on a foreground service. The same applies for only this time. So in a nutshell, one time and while in use are actually the same. They allow the app to access APIs that request these permissions while the app is in use. The difference is that one time will revoke the permission after the user is no longer using the app, or maybe the foreground service already terminated to do the task. So no, you don't have to do anything if you are currently following the best practice. So the best practice are designed in a way to aim to make sure the user understands the permission before granting it and why your application really needs that permission. Let me explain with a real use case. So let's imagine we have a chat application where Bob is asking Alice to share her location. Alice sees the share button that hints the possible actions. This displays some sort of menu that actually shows several options, but clearly separate them on a way that the user might not accidentally click on those. This does not care how you implement on your application. The important point here is that you avoid users clicking buttons that might request location, might request a permission by accident, because we want to ensure that the user allows the permission willingly. So Alice taps that location button, and this triggers what we call the request best practice. It's this pseudocode that actually applies to any runtime permission, where basically, first, we will check if we have this permission. If not, most likely the first case, we will then go into a should show request permission rationale. This is a system call that will return true if the system decides that there is not enough context or that the user might not be sure why you're asking for that permission, telling you that you should actually explain why you're using that before requesting the permission. Most of the time, not always, it will return false the first time, meaning that it will tell, yeah, you go ahead and ask the user. So then you can request the location, the permissions, any permission. But in our case, we are requesting the location permission. This prompts what we call the system UI permission request that offers the user to select one of these options. If you have explained maybe before, or your flow is clearly understood by the user, most likely they are going to accept this permission. But let's imagine that maybe it's not clear why the permission is needed for this feature. So the user, in this case, Alice, clicks deny. On that moment, our request permission result will be called, telling us that the permission was rejected. We then should make sure to explain the user which functionality is not working because of that action and highlight it on several possible ways. One would be like to try to explain it via snack bar, that we could not share the location because the permission was rejected. As well, we highlight the button to indicate maybe that this was the action that triggered that request. It doesn't really matter. It just matters that you really try to explain the user what happened. Because then the user might realize, okay, in order to use this feature, I actually need to grant the permission. So let's imagine that after that, or another day, they try it again. This time, the should rationale method would most likely return true because it detected the user might not be really sure what you're asking for that. So here's where it's really important for you to provide an in-context UI explaining at your best why the permission is needed for the feature that you try to do, for the action you're trying to do. And even more important is offering an opt-out to the user. In this case, for example, with the cancel button, to allow user to say, no, I actually do not want to grant this permission before you even ask to the system to request the permission, because this will avoid prompting the user with the system dialog where they might deny, and this time deny permanently, because that's what we want to avoid, that the user actually denies permanently. And here is up to the user to decide if, okay, I understood why they are using it, so I'm going to allow access, and then they're going to be prompted with the request, the system UI. Most likely at that moment, the user will understand clearly, and if it already click allow on your dialog, they're most likely going to give you already access. Then you just do the action that was supposed. So finally, Alice decide to grant us permission, and we can share her location with her. Clearly note that we are not trying to distinguish if the user selected only this time or while in use. Both mean the same for us. If Ali selected only this time, it's fine. Next time she wants to share the location, she will be asked again for the permission. But it's up to her to decide if she wants to share it, if she wants to grant this permission all the time or not. We should not do anything. We should just follow the same flow all the time, the same best practice. All right, so this was an example of how you can, an application, follow the best practice for runtime permissions in general, but based on the foreground location permission request. Now let's get into the part where we explain how we are actually making location permission even more special. So we already split in Android 10 between foreground access to location and background access. Depending on your use case, you might need one or both permissions in order to perform some of the features. This gives users a fine-grained control of how they want to grant your application access. And we encourage developers to only request for foreground and only incrementally request for background when there is a feature that might need that, instead of automatically ask for background directly. In Android 10, this was just introduced, but was not really enforced by the system. In Android 11, this pattern has become a requirement. So if you are actually only requesting for foreground location, there is no change. There is nothing you need to handle. There is only this time change. And if you handle the best practice, as I mentioned before, you should be fine. And this is, for most of the cases, the only permission for location that you will need. Where it comes a change is when you are actually have a feature that might request background location, for example, geofencing. In that case, it's important that you incrementally ask for permissions, since in Android 11, if you target SDK 30, meaning you are targeting Android 11, and the app is running on an Android 11 device, you will not be able to request foreground and background at the same time. Instead, you have to eventually, in some moment, request the foreground. And then when there is a feature, for example, the geofencing, that might request it, on that moment, follow the same best practice I explained to request the background permission. And here is even more important to follow the best practices, because we are not going to prompt the user with a dialog. We are going to bring them directly to the location setting permission screen. This screen is the same that they can access when they go to settings and permissions and then to location. But the background location permission request will directly prompt them to there, where they can actually choose to allow or to even deny. You can choose any of these options. So it's really important that you explain to the user, why do you need this extra layer permission on the location, and offering them to opt out before you actually request, because you want to avoid to over request for background location permission, because there is a limit of times that you can do that. We obviously don't want to break apps. So that's why if your application is requesting foreground and background at the same time, and you're still not targeting Android 11, so API level 29 or below, and your app is running on an Android 11 device, we are going to show a permission that composes the foreground and background permission request. So you will be able to do that without breaking the app. The problem is that this UI is way more complex, because we're offering the three options for the foreground permission, and then explaining the user with our own words that the app is requesting for more access to the background. They can change that on the settings. So here is really important that you follow best practice and eventually migrate to target API level 30 to make sure that then you have the more proper flow, as I explained before, requesting incrementally the permission. So in a nutshell, if you're only requesting for foreground location, you will be fine. You can still do that. There is no change there. Following the best practice, there will be no problem. If your application is requesting both permissions and you're still targeting API 29, you're going to get this middle dialog where the opt-in for background location is going to be in the description, and then it's going to prompt to the settings screen. Or if you're already targeting API level 30 then you will be able to prompt the user directly there. So my personal take is that you should review the usage of your permissions. Do you really need background? Review the different UX flows and adapt to the best practice. Because actually following the best practice normally leads to be able to faster increment the target SDK for your applications and be able to support new versions of Android faster. With this, I finish the permission changes. But following to the same topic,
Hello, everyone. My name is Xiaodao. I'm a Google developer advocate in Singapore. Today, I'm going to walk you through the changes on app compatibility framework and non-SDK interfaces. So we'll take a look at the app compatibility framework first. The main purpose of app compatibility framework is to provide developers the control and flexibility when they test their app on a newer version of Android. On Android 11, Google has introduced new tools for testing and debugging developer app against these behaviors. So these tools are a list of toggles. They are part of the app compatibility framework. Developers can easily turn on or off these toggles to test one of the behavior change. You can use either ADB commands or the setting UI to disable or enable these changes. These toggles could better help developers to conduct an incremental test or isolate all the changes brought by each behavior. So we can turn one of the toggle off to test our apps against the rest of the behavior change. Or we can just turn on one of the toggle, isolate this change, and test our app against it. There are two types of changes on Android 11. The first one is the changes that affect all apps on the platform. The second one, we call it target SDK gated changes. So this change affects apps targeting Android 11. So the toggles covers both of these two types. With this new testing tool, developers can easily turn on or off a behavior change on Android 11 and test their app against it. When the developer's app's target SDK is lower than the gated version, these target SDK gated changes are off by default. Developers can switch them on, see how this change will affect their app when they upgrade their target SDK version to a higher level in the future. You can see in this process, developers doesn't need to change the manifest file and doesn't need to go through the long building process. This will save us plenty of time. These toggles are not always available. So here we have a policy table. The rows of the policy table are the build tabs of Android platform. And the columns of this table are the build tabs of developer app. We can see from the first row, if developers are testing their app on a user debuggable build of Android 11, these toggles are always available, no matter developer is using a debuggable app or not. For the developer preview version or beta version of Android 11, these toggles will only be available if you are testing your app with a debuggable app. For the public release build after Android 11 released, these toggles will only be available for the target SDK gated changes. So this URL contains all the change and the details for the toggles. Please take a look. Next part, I'm going to introduce some changes to the non-SDK API. On Android 9 or Android P, we have introduced a notion of different API lists. Public SDK is covered by whitelist. Google encourages developers to use the APIs in whitelist. Other APIs are not supposed to be used by developers, and we plan to eliminate this usage. We call them non-SDK APIs or non-SDK interfaces. Because Android doesn't guarantee a similar behavior across release for these non-SDK methods, so relying on them is not a good idea in the long run. Depends on how heavy these APIs are being used, so we put the APIs in different lists. The public SDK was covered by the whitelist. Developers are encouraged to use the methods in the whitelist. On the other side, we have blacklist. The APIs in blacklist are fully restricted. Developers are not supposed to use any method in blacklist. Between whitelist and blacklist, we have a gray list. These APIs, developers can use them under certain conditions. Within gray list, we have a dark gray list and light gray. For the APIs in dark gray list, the usage are restricted for apps targeting a certain API level. But for light gray list, now there's no usage restrictions. But if your code is using the APIs in light gray list, there will be a warning, and Google may restrict this API in the future. So we put APIs in different lists, try to provide a smooth process when users upgrade their apps to a newer version of Android. We try to leave enough time for developers to migrate all their methods to public SDK. This is because we see a lot of issues happening when apps upgrade from a lower version of Android to a higher version if they are using non-SDK API. So this usage not just from your code, it can also come from the libraries your code or project are using. Also, we have seen a lot of issues. We have also seen a lot of DRM issues if developers apps are using these non-SDK APIs. On Android 10, Google has added unsupported app usage annotation to signify non-SDK API. This annotation has been scoped to target API level by a max target SDK parameter. If you didn't see this parameter on API, that means this API is in the light gray list. You are able to use it now. But if you see the max target SDK equals to 0, that means this API is in the blacklist. Developers should not use this API on any version of the Android platform. Sometimes you can see the max target SDK equals to a specific API level. That means this API is accessible by apps with target SDK version up to this level. Anything about it cannot access. In Android 11, we have shifted a bunch of APIs to a more restricted mode. These APIs may be still accessible for apps targeting Android 10 or lower. But for apps If they are targeting Android 11 or higher, the access will be restricted. Please keep in mind, this change will not affect the app at the time when Android 11 is released, but only when your app's target SDK version upgraded to 11, to Android 11. So in Android 11, we have increased whitelist and blacklist. We have managed to reduce the light gray list. These non-SDK APIs are kept, so we are preventing things from getting worse. Non-SDK test APIs are blacklisted by default. Developers can continue to use test APIs that are part of the gray list. New system APIs for mainland are blacklisted as well. Please look for alternatives in the public SDK. If you cannot find a proper alternative in public SDK for your use case, please submit a request to Google to add a new method in the public SDK. Developers are able to use the following methods to check the non-SDK interface usage in their code. First, we can build and run a debuggable app. While running through the test cases, the system will print out a log message if our code tries to trigger any of the non-SDK interfaces. Secondly, we can also upload our app to the testing track of Google Play Console. After being uploaded, our app will automatically get tested for the potential issues, and a pre-launch report will be generated. If you are using Android Studio, the Lint tool can help us to inspect our code, give us either warnings or errors, depends on which API our code is trying to access. And finally, developers are also able to use the strict mode API or Veridex tool to check non-SDK interfaces. This is my last slide. In the following part, my colleague Marcel will introduce some of the system UI improvements on Android 11. Let me hand over to Marcel.
Hey there again. Thanks, Xiaodao. Before I start, just a quick reminder: the Q&A the questions can be asked on the section here below. Even that every time that the new section comes up, the question might seem to disappear. We are keeping track of those. So just please go ahead and feel free to add the questions here. Or if you're watching the YouTube live stream, you can as well post the questions in the chat, and we are monitoring that as well. All right, so we have covered a lot so far, and you might be wondering, where are the new shiny things that we want to add into our app to make them even better? Okay, let's cover some of them. Finally, a better control for your keyword. We know this was a struggle for many of you. For many years, you were not able to know if a keyword was showing or going down, like the hiding APIs were a bit, So we are finally giving a developer 2 ways to have more control over the keyword. One is via a callback interface that gives you some of the states of the keyword, and then you can react and make things like hide some views, show some views, maybe move them. But not only that, we are as well providing a new API that gives you control of the animation of the keyword. So you can combine your own UIs with the keyword filling. For example, in this video, when the user over scroll, it will smoothly scroll, like together with the view. So this API will give you control over the duration, the interpolation, and the position on the screen. It's a bit too much to cover all those APIs right now, so I will just go quickly over the main important points. So let's start taking a look at the callback API. This is a callback that from Android 11 on, you will be able to attach to any view. Basically, it will tell the view, it will notify the view, it will notify the callback that the keyboard, the different states of the keyboard. So we will have, for example, that when the keyboard is preparing to be displayed, it will notify you. The same for when it's starting, and it will notify you all the progress, all the way, finally telling you when it finished. This will allow you to have a lot of control of how your views should react to that. If you want to know more on how this is implemented, for example, on the video I showed before, there is already an existing public sample on the official Android GitHub under, here you could see it on the bottom of the screen, where it explains a bit better what you have to do and the different types of actions that you can do in order to implement the behavior you saw before. So as I said, this is not all. We have as well this API that will give you control over the keyboard animation, allowing you to modify like the duration, the interpolation, and so on. This is a more advanced API and requires a better knowledge of how views works, how user interaction, for example, controlling the touch, how animations work. So it's a bit more complex, and we don't have the time nor like could fit the code in this slide. So again, you can check the public sample that will show how to implement the animation you saw before. But on a quick nutshell, what you can do is take control, providing some of the information like the interpolation, the duration, the type, and attaching a listener that will give you control about the keyboard and allow you to implement great animations to combine your UI with the keyboard. All right, so another thing that we are adding on Android 11 is something we call variable frame rate. So as you might know already, there are some devices on the market that allows to modify the frames per second. Normally, most of the Android devices were going on 60 frames per second. But in the recent years, we have seen more and more devices supporting more frames per second that gives better performance, for example, for games or video. So Android as well evolves when the devices evolve. So on Android 11, we are introducing this new API that will allow you to change the frame rate on runtime and as well specified already beforehand. So this new version will allow, for example, to change from 60 frames per second to actually 120 frames per second. This will give you your application an extra performance on the view. This is important for games and maybe some other apps, but keep in mind that if your app does not need this extra performance, you should not change this variable frame rate. And as well, it will not work on all the devices. It will only work on the devices that support higher frame rates and as well supports the new variable API. Did someone set crash? We all know we are great developers, but crash happens. And sometimes these issues happens on the most unexpected way. And at the end, we hope for the best, that we can get enough information out of these issues. Because sometimes what happens is that these issues came from native crashes or maybe unhandled exceptions that will kill our Android process. So it will kill the process that the application is running on, and causing that some of the crash frameworks not able to get that crash actually, because the process will be killed automatically and you don't get this information. So then you get users reporting that there was a crash and you do not have enough information. You don't know what is happening. That's why in Android 11, we are actually bringing a new API that creates what we call an app exit info ring buffer. That basically means that every time an app crashes, it will store some of the information of that crash, like timestamp, like the stack trace, etc. And then when your app comes up again, either because the user opened it or maybe opens it a completely different day. It doesn't matter because you will be able to access this information. You will be able to query what were the crashes there. And either maybe you can show some extra information to the user that already happened there, or you just can fetch directly this new crash into your crash report tool. And since you have the timestamp and you have all the information necessary, you will have proper data and accurate for when that crash happened. One quick note here is that this is a buffer. So if there are many crashes, this buffer will start cleaning all crashes. So you cannot access all the history of all your crashes. So it's just a buffer. Take that into account. And with this, I'm finishing my part, but obviously there is way more that we don't want to overdo here and cover everything. There is even more things that coming in Android 11. As you have seen on the timeline, we are still on developer preview. And when the beta comes, there will be more announcements. But if you want to keep up to date, please subscribe to the official channels like YouTube, Twitter, or specifically the Android developer blog posts, where we keep them up to date with the latest news and all the information with code labs, new GitHub repos showing some of the samples, etc.
Hello, everyone. My name is Xiaodao. I'm a Google developer advocate in Singapore. I'm working with developers on Android. Today, I'm going to quickly walk you through 2 other changes on Android 11. The first change I want to talk about today is the MAC address restriction. So we all know the MAC address is globally unique, and users are not able to reset it. So Google doesn't recommend developers to use MAC address for any form of user tracking or user identification. On Android 10, Google has randomized the MAC address for apps which is not privileged apps. And MAC address is no longer accessible if your app is targeting Android 11 or more. Developers can only access network interfaces with an IPv4 address. We recommend developers to use a higher level of APIs like the Connectivity Manager instead of the lower level APIs. The second change I want to share today is Google has introduced additional restriction to the system alert window. So we know developers are able to create a floating window over other apps. For example, some apps create a chat bubble, display it over other apps, or show it on the home screen. Users can easily use the chat bubble to talk to their friends. In earlier version of Android, developers are able to create an intent with action manage overlay permission and specify a package name in the intent. This can bring users to an app-specific screen where users can manage permissions. On Android 11, this is no longer possible. If developers pass the package name in the intent, the platform will ignore it. Developers always need to bring user to the top level screen, where user needs to select your app first, then grant or revoke the system alert window permission. This affects all apps running on Android 11. So these are the changes I would like to share with you today. And in the following part, we are going to have a QA session. You can ask for any questions regarding to the topics we have shared today. And feel free to leave your comments or feedback in the comment area below. Let's go to the QA part.
So, hello everyone. I'm Saurabh. I'm a Google developer expert for Android, and I'll be kicking off the Q&A session right now with Marcel and Xiaodao. Marcel and Xiaodao, would you like to tell us a bit more about yourself first?
Sure, I will go ahead. Hi everyone. So my name is Marcel. I'm a partner developer advocate working in Singapore. So normally I work with the partners around the region in Android-related topics, and I've been involved recently on the Android 11 changes, and this is where the presentation comes in. And today I'm here to try to answer any possible question about Android 11 that you might have. Obviously, I don't know everything, so it might be that I don't know the answer, but that's okay. I can follow up afterwards on a chat or on Twitter. Yeah, Xiaodao.
Hi, everyone. Very happy to see you guys here. My name is Xiaodao. I'm a developer advocate in Google. Thanks for joining the session. Thanks for spending time with us on Saturday afternoon.
Okay, thank you both. Before we get started with the Q&A questions that I'm noticing on the live chat, I just want to ask you guys up front if you have any personal thoughts on Android 11 or any favorite feature you would want to talk about.
Yeah, I think this Android 11 follows like a bit like the recent Android versions, right? Focus a lot in privacy and improving habits that we might have on other Android versions. And this is something that I at least personally care a lot. And for example, having the one-time permission, even that for developers might directly seem like, oh, gosh, another permission to handle or something like that. I find it really, really good for users. And we did it in a way as well that it's not that bad for developers if you follow the best practices. So this, I think, is one of my favorite, but definitely as well the keyboard. I think the keyboard API is something that we all wanted since long time. Unfortunately, before you all ask, yeah, this is only an Android 11 on, so you cannot get this nice animation and API on other Android versions.
Yeah, okay. For me, yes, I think there are many changes about privacy and security. Personally, I like the one-time permission option and also the app compatibility framework that helps developer a lot. Yeah, I like two of them.
Okay, so great. Thanks for that. Also, we sent out a tweet a couple of days ago. So we had a couple of questions from Twitter, which I would like to field first. So first up, I have, what is the recommended timeline for developers to start targeting Android R? Is there any recommendations from your side?
Yeah, I think so. Following like previous years, right? Like the Android releases normally tends to be at the end of the year, and this is when actually the users and the consumers of your application starts to get these devices or get these updates of the Android OS. So by then, definitely you should at least make sure that your app is not crashing and it's working. And this is where the app compatibility framework that Xiaodao talked about has a lot of impact, because you can try new flags, new features without even changing your target SDK, right? Because sometimes when you change the target SDK, there are some things that you need to fix before it works. So it might be a bit, yeah, not fast to try it out. But with the app compatibility, you can try it out right away. If you see that nothing is breaking, then just go ahead and try to target to be always at the last target SDK. So as a recommendation, I would say, yeah, like you can already start to playing around that and probably target a couple of months before the actual release of Android 11. to have already been targeting SDK 30.
All right, that's good to hear. So next up, I have another question from Twitter, and this one is about permissions. So the question is, what happens if the app like directs the user to the camera? So the app already requested for camera permission, and then you come back into the app again. So you just left for a minute. At that point, does the app lose access to the camera, even if the user granted a one-time permission, or is that permission held on for a certain amount of time?
Yeah, so we have what we call like the grace period. That it's a period between the user left an application and we revoke the permission. And in this scenario that you're talking about, most likely it's going to be handled. So if the user goes out of the app and then comes in like right away or like a couple of seconds or within a minute or so, the permission most likely will not be revoked. We are not defining exactly like the time that this grace period is, but we are handling this situation. But at the end, as I mentioned during the presentation, what is important is that you follow the best practice and you don't ask for permissions upfront on application start, right? So you really need to scope when you want to ask the permission, scope where your permissions are needed, and make sure to follow this kind of flow that it's like, do I have permission? No. Should I ask, should I show a rationale to the user? Yes, then show the rationale. And then the next time the user, once the user see the rationale, then they can say, okay, yeah, now I know why the application wants to use it and I want to grant permissions. And only in that moment you ask for the permission screen, right? So most likely you're going to get granted permission already because the user already saw rationale and understood that rationale. So that is the best practice you can do. And yeah, and then you don't even have to care that much of how to handle this one-time permission or the grace period or anything.
Got it. All right. One final question from Twitter before we move on to the questions on the live stream. And just a reminder to everyone, you can still continue leaving questions and we'll pick them up. Okay. So if the user granted the always permission in a previous OS version, and then you have an OS upgrade, does that permission carry forward?
Yes, so I think it's mentioned in some part of the presentation. We did not downgrade any permission, right? And this was a change on Android 10 already. So on Android 10, we introduced this always or like while the app in use. So this is more from that part. Like the one-time permission, it really doesn't take effect. If the user already granted you permission, it's not that we are going to go back to one-time permission. But for this specific question for always or while in use, if the user had already given you always, it's going to be kept. The difference is that on Android 10, we already introduced this notification that the OS is launching when the text that an application is using one of the permissions on background. So like location permission on background. It shows a notification saying, hey, this application is trying to access that. And then user can decide, like to downgrade to while in use.
All right, great. Okay, so now let's take up some questions from the live stream. So this one is a question for Xiaodao. It's about how do we integrate overlay permissions in activity fragments for Kotlin or Java?
Yeah, so this is still the same. Developers can create an intent with the action manager overlay permission action. Just previously on Android 10, developers are able to specify the package name within the intent, but on Android 11, the package name will be ignored. So the intent will take users to the setting UI of this permission. So users can select the app there, select your app, and grant or revoke the system overlay permission. So your app can get that permission and display a widget or fragment over other.
All right, okay. Thank you for that answer, Xiaodao. So next up, we have a question about the crash history. So is there a time limit on how long the crash history is kept?
Okay. Hey, Desmond. So yeah, like so it's like a buffer, right? So every application will have its own app ring info buffer. It's a long name. That basically means that every time there is a crash, we are gonna put the information, stack trace, or ANRs, or whatever is the information that the system will normally give to the application. We are putting on this buffer. Obviously, that means that if the crash maybe has a bigger stack trace, maybe has more information than the other, that buffer will get filled more often. So it's not like, oh, we just get like the last three stack traces, right? It really depends on how much space is in that buffer, depending on the crash and depending on the info. So normally the idea of this API is more to get the last crash of the that happened, that your application was not able to get it. And then you can forward this crash that the application might have not seen to either your crash report tool or to some metrics that you're tracking, or even you could show a message to the user saying, oh, yeah, sorry for the last crash. But so it's not like really like a quantitative measure. It depends on when this buffer will be filled. Then we will keep removing the old stack traces.
Great, thanks for the answer. I hope that clears it up. The next up, we have a question about one-time permission again. So we're asking if it's possible to suppress one-time permission for certain apps, such as like a QR code scanning app, or they have to ask every time.
So yeah, quick answer, no. So definitely this is something that we don't want to whitelist. There are no special cases. So if the user really just wants to give you the permission for this time because they feel like they just maybe want to try the feature, right? Maybe they want to try the QR code one time. And then if it works as expected, probably then they will be confident enough the next time you open the app and prompt for the permission again, and they will select while in use. So yeah, there is no way to oppress that.
All right. Okay. So no exceptions made for anybody over there.
No, no exception here.
All right. We have a lot more questions about permissions coming up. So the next one is also like, so the new option about one time only, is it the same as the previous option of allow and then followed by a deny?
Yeah, not exactly. So how it works is that when the user give you one-time permission, means that it granted the permission, right? So if you checked after you get the on permission result, you check if you have this permission, it's going to say granted. What happened is that when the user goes out of the app and the system detects that the user is not using this app anymore, it revokes the permission. So when you come up to the app again, if you check if you have this permission, it's gonna say no, it's revoked, right? So it's not that like you select always and then you select deny or something like this. So it's basically we are just gonna revoke the permission after the application is not longer in use.
Got it. Okay. Another question about permissions. So the question is, are we able to specifically only ask the OS to request for a subset of the permission type? Like, let's say only ask for one-time permission and not always. Is that possible?
No. So you cannot control that. You can request a type of permission. And for example, if you request the foreground location permission, either the coarse or the fine location, that is not going to offer anyways the option of always. So the option of always has been removed. It's only going to offer either one time or while the app in use. But then for the rest of the permissions is similar. So microphone and camera, you cannot get access always. There is no way. So when you ask for those permissions as well, you are only going to get one time and while the app in use. But for other permissions, then yes, then other runtime permissions you will get always and one time. But you cannot say, I want to request for only one time. There is no such an option.
Okay. So it's a system control dialog. The users cannot override what's shown on that.
Correct. That's the same as since it was introduced. There has not been changed there. Like the system dialogues are made on purpose that you cannot modify them.
Got it. Okay. So now we have a question about the crash info that was highlighted. So once the device is restarted and the app wasn't launched in that period since it crashed, will the crash info still be available?
That's an excellent question, and I'm not sure on the answer. I would imagine so, but let me check this later. I don't know the answer on that. So I guess that you want to know, like, there's a crash, the device restarts and then opens again, and you check the buffer, so the application info. I would imagine so, but yeah, I don't know the answer. Let me check.
Sure, we'll let you get back on that, or we could download the beta and give it a run.
As well.
All right, I think that's about the questions we had on the live stream, and we've covered the questions on Twitter as well. I think, okay, then I think we can call it a wrap. In case, we have.
Yeah, there are more live comments there.
Well, there are more comments coming in. There's a suggestion that you could write a log file on your Android project directly, and then you should be able to read that log file for the crash.
Sorry, you need to write your log file from your Android projects? Not sure I follow up on that.
Even I'm not sure what that is about. Like, can we have some more clarification on the live chat? That would be great. We could then follow up on that.
I think there's a suggestion for one of the previous question, right?
That could be.
Oh yeah, that could be the case.
I guess that it means more like, so if then this history, this buffer would be written in some config log files so that they will be saved on the device and then the application can access to it. Yeah, I don't know how it exactly works on this sense. I would imagine that this buffer it's kept, so it's persisted. So then when the device restarts, you probably still get this information. And then there's a question from Desmond saying if the crash history removed upon reading. So you mean like when you access the information on the app info, if then it's automatically removed? No, I don't think so. So I think you have no control on like how the information it's going to be there. This buffer, it's for every application. It has the ring buffer, and then as soon as you keep, you can keep reading on it if there are crashes. And then there will come new crashes, and then they will remove the old crashes from that buffer. Maybe let me ask you some questions, Saurabh, as well.
Sure, go ahead.
So let's revert the rules here.
Okay, all right.
As a beekeeper programmer, which is your favorite feature on Android 11 that you're looking forward to integrate into the application?
That's actually a really tricky one because most of the changes for Android 11, to be honest, does not end up affecting us because we are mostly a video streaming app. But there's one thing we are experimenting with right now is the new storage framework, which was also introduced in Android 10.
Mm-hmm.
But as we all know, it wasn't really adopted by everyone in Android 10 simply because Google still kept the legacy options enabled. But from what I see in Android 11, they're again pushing people to start adopting the new storage framework that's accessible. So that's something that we look forward to adopt. Along with that, there'll definitely be some experiments we'll be doing with the new keyboard animation for our live chat feature that we have in the app. So I think personally, I would be more excited about working forward with window insets and building some new keyboard animations for anybody who's on Android 11.
Yeah,
that's hands-on my favorite.
it definitely opens the door to a lot of new animations, a lot of new flows, and like have a bit more control, especially on this kind of features like live chats or like chat applications, or like even filling inputs on long lists. So that's pretty nice. And for the scope storage, for the people on the live stream, we did not cover these. This was covered by our colleague Amrit. I think you have seen before the link to the Android 11 labs. There is a full stream there to watch the scope storage presentation and the changes on Android 11. It's really interesting as well. I think this time I think it's a quite good feature, and it's going to be more adopted, and yeah, give a bit more clarity from the changes that were introduced back on Android 10. Okay, so I think the live chat goes on.
Yeah, there are a few more discussions happening on the live chat still about the crash-related stuff.
What features do you dislike about Android 10 from Android 11 from Android 10? What features do you dislike? I don't think I would dislike any feature, to be honest. I think, like, as I said, like, I'm more pro privacy, so every privacy change, even that could mean like some effort on our side or when we develop applications and so on, I think is really beneficial for users. And then from all the other changes, I mean, obviously they are good new additions to UI. Obviously, it's always the same. You want to use them, but it's only for the new Android OS versions. And this is why with the Jetpack libraries and so on, we try to adopt new versions, but it's not always possible, right? So we cannot always backwards compatible everything. But I don't know, Xiaodao, do you have any feature that you dislike?
Yeah, not quite sure, but I understand that every newer version of Android, Google kind of bring more like restrictions to developers because they try to make the system and the platform more secure. And this sometimes may bring additional trouble to developers. For example, we have the non-SDK interface. We are adding more and more APIs to the blacklist, or even we move some APIs from the light gray list to dark gray list. This may bring additional troubles to have. This may have developers to make some changes to their projects, and this add more work. But it's totally understandable because I think we need to spend some time work together to make the system better. Yeah.
Yep. So clarification about this discussion on the log cat and so on. I think there is a confusion here. So the new app crash info, it's nothing related to the log cat or the logs. So obviously when you're debugging application, if it crash, you're still gonna get all the crash on the log cat, and then you can see what it happens. So this new feature is for when the app is live, so it's on production. That basically in some cases the process is terminated, meaning that there is no time to collect the crash information because the process where your application is running, you just get killed. So for example, your crash framework would not be able to get that crash. So this is where this API comes in, that then later on when the application is restarted, then you can collect this information. So putting it into your crash reports or something. Because sometimes, like we would have users complaining, hey, this is crashing, and you just check the log, like the crash framework you're using, and you don't see any crash at all. And you're like, hey, why is that happening?
Great. We have a tricky question from JT. I'll fill that in. It's about, is it worth the time to cater to the latest and the greatest Android in terms of new UI, given that many users will not have it on their phone in the near future?
Yeah, this is a really valid point, and this is something that, yeah, unfortunately, it's true, especially depending on the areas, and Southeast Asia and APAC in general might be a bit more related, where there are maybe less devices on Android 11 right away. So not Android 11, like on the latest Android version right away. I think it really depends on where your target is. So it's not only target market as well, target users that you want, right? Depending on which users are you targeting, they are more prompt to have more, I don't know, like better devices or being up to the latest technology. So then they will always try to have devices that they are on the last OS. So I think it depends on your target user, your application. Obviously, if you check your stats and you only have like 1% of users on the last one, then yeah, probably it's difficult to convince product to implement a new feature that only 1% of users will see, right? So I think it is a matter of like evaluating your user base and then your priorities, and then decide if it is worth to implement this new feature or not.
All right, great. So chug along, people will get these updates, and it's always good to have shiny new things in your app. At least the few users that who get to use this will really be happy with your app when you integrate them.
Yeah, correct. And I think it's important to distinguish between new features and changes. That one thing is that you don't want to adopt a new feature because only 5% of your users are there, but definitely you don't want to crash for 5% of your users either, right? So it's really important to adopt the changes soon, and being always like using the system APIs and not doing like tricky workarounds, as Xiaodao was talking. It always helps then that you can avoid crashes on new versions, and it's faster to adopt new target SDKs, because if you're using what the system offers to you rather than trying to work around it, it will always be better.
Great. I think one thing I'll add on to that is the first thing anybody should do is actually, at least bare minimum, is update at least their compile time SDK. At least update their compile SDK version to see what are the new changes that are coming in, and are you accidentally using any deprecated APIs, or the fact that you get new lint checks available to you, or nullable annotation. That's at least the first thing every engineer should at least look into in Android.
Yeah, correct. I think lint is an excellent tool, and then every new SDK version we are putting in, we add new lint checks, right? And lint checks helps you find in your code places where you might be calling APIs that are only available in certain OS version, and it can indicate as well where places that your code needs attention. So yeah, moving to compile SDK is the first thing that you should do, and then the app compatibility SDK, app compatibility framework is an excellent tool to try things out without even like writing a line of code, right? You just go enable one flag and see if the application works. Oh, awesome! So then you are good to go on that area, right?
Okay. So next up, we have a question about crash logs again. So is the crash log persisted on the app sandbox or in the system level? I think in other ways you could put this or correct me on the live chat if I'm wrong. Is it available for other apps to actually access your crash information?
Yeah.
Or is
no.
it just sandbox to your app?
No. So I like the persisted part, I'm not really sure. Like either if it's on your files of the. So I don't think so. It's on the system level. I think that it's persisted. But what it for sure is that every single app has its own buffer, and other apps cannot access that buffer. So you cannot access that to see how the other apps are crashing. This would be really a security flaw.
All right. Okay. This was a question that was raised right up when we started the live chat. I just got up to it. It's a question on like, what are your thoughts on wireless debugging? Like the new ADB wireless debugging that was introduced in Android 11. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is awesome. So it's something that I think a lot of us were really looking forward for it, especially if you're working on apps that you require a physical device, either because, I don't know, you might be using features like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi scanning, or I don't know, something that requires a physical device that the emulator is not really able to emulate that properly. You would find yourself with like 3-4 different devices, 4 cables, they're all connected, and so on. So the ADB wireless, it's really good. And there were solutions before, right? It's not nothing that's entirely new. There were some solutions that you could enable this kind of ADB wireless. But with the new solution introduced in Android 11, it makes it way more faster and seamless and, like proper working theoretically. But if you see any issues on it, obviously always report into the issue tracker. But yeah, is there anything special that they want to know, or was just more like the opinion?
No, it was just general thoughts on what do you think about wireless debugging.
Yeah.
All right, that seems like we've covered everything on the live chat. Oh wait, I see one more which I missed out. So it was a question from Desmond as well earlier. It was about we have the new activity result contract as a part of Jetpack. So do you foresee stuff like on request permission results to be deprecated in the future?
Yeah, so I think I would like to clarify that one thing is like the Android OS, and then there's the Jetpack libraries, right? Jetpack libraries tries to either bring some sort of backwards compatibility to the OS part, or even add new types of frameworks, new types of mechanisms that they are not tied to the OS, so they can be released frequently. And I think this activity contract is more on the second side, right? Where you bring another type of framework that it's tied together with all these architectural changes of Jetpack, like the lifecycle events, live data, and all this. So this is just like a framework on top of that to work on the OS framework, meaning I highly doubt that we will deprecate any of these methods on the OS level. So we rather just put a architecture design from the Jetpack library on top. So this is just a way from us to say, this is how we think that would be a good way to handle these type of events. But obviously, you're free to handle it whatever you want, right? So I don't think that we would deprecate this method, because it doesn't mean that it's the only unique solution. Everything what you see in Jetpack is I think how the Android DevRel team like to say, like an opinionated guide on how we see Android architectures and Android framework, right? So it is really opinionated, and that doesn't mean that is the single solution there.
Great, thanks. That was a very detailed answer, I must say. All right, I think those were all the questions we had on the live chat. So that's about it. Thank you for your time, Marcel and Xiaodao. I'll pass on to Julius now.
Yep, thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for being part of the program. And of course, if you are interested to learn more about Android 11, we actually have a link right there where you can access, and you can see more videos and more discussion about Android 11. We will be putting it in the comment section as well, so that you can click on it and have an easy access. And there will be an Android beta launch show. Many of you probably might know about this already. It will be on June 3. So if you're interested to hop on and be part of the event, please feel free to go to that link below and be able to participate live on it. Once again, thank you for our friends from Vietnam, Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia. Thank you so much for advertising this event in your community, and we hope to continue to partner with you. And once again, we are looking for speakers. If you are interested in any of these topics and more, anything related to Google products, Google technologies, please sign up in the CFP below, and we'll be very much happy to contact you and have you part of our show. And with that, thank you so much for being part of Android 11 chat. We very much appreciate any feedback that you may have. So if it's at all possible, please go to the link below, give us some feedback so that we can continue to improve in our future events. Once again, thank you so much. Have a good day.